So welcome back to another episode of LA Fishguys. You might remember back in episode 95, always a second chance for success, I had made another attempt at trying to produce tank-raised moon jellyfish. I have a business venture where I have developed a tank made specifically for jellyfish called the Aquarium, and it's pretty hard to sell a jellyfish tank if you don't have livestock or the jellyfish to put into it. And there really isn't any good source or supply of livestock in the way of jellyfish on a regular basis other than raising it yourself. And again, that's what I set out to do. The two main thrusts of my second attempt were cleanliness of the tanks and at the same time temperature. The cleanliness of the tank. All that debris that remains down in the bottom of the tank just seems to build up what has been referred to as fouling agents, and it has a very negative effect on the jellyfish. It would begin to eat holes in the bells of the jellies, what I refer to as the Swiss cheese effect, and jellies would decline in a matter of days. I had imported some shipments that when they arrived I could already see the holes in the bells, and within days they just literally fell apart in the customer's tank, which is not a good reflection on me as the developer of the tank. So again, the cleanliness of the tank was really one of the two main thrusts, and I really made it a point to control the amount of food that goes into the jellyfish tanks, as not only while I'm raising them, but even the display systems that I set up. Originally it was suggested twice daily feedings. I've actually cut back to once a day feedings, which obviously cuts the amount of food or waste that ends up in the tank by 50%. And the jellyfish seem to be doing fine. The second aspect of this second attempt was to drop the temperature. Typically moon jellyfish are promoted at around 68 degrees. Well, they come from all different parts of the world. Tropical environments, cold water environments, but the main strain of moon jellyfish that I've been working with are what I'll simply refer to as the Pacific Coast moon jelly, which is considered a cold water jellyfish. Can range anywhere from 55 to maybe 68, 70 degrees. The point is that the cooler the temperature, the slower things are going to happen. Yes, they'll grow slower, but at the same time, if there are any issues, those too will occur at a slower pace. And so I have really made it a point to bring the temperature down here, in this case 55 degrees. I don't have a tremendous speed of growth, but I can tell you I've got 300 jellyfish on hand, and I've had them since last January when I recorded that episode and made that second attempt. So I think I'm really doing quite well this time around. And again, the keys are controlling the amount of food and controlling the temperature. With that said, I have found myself at another point where I've discovered what appears to be a little bit of an issue, and I think I may have figured out how to resolve it. Now here's the tank that's holding about 300 of them. They're, maybe a range from an inch to inch and a half. I don't know how well you can see them in there. You might be able to see them better here. But as I mentioned, there's probably 300 of them in here. But if you look really close, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, you can kind of see that the bells are kind of rounded. It's not that typical saucer or disc shape. It's beginning to pull itself tighter around the rim, making more of a dome, I guess I would call it. And it took me a while to kind of try to figure out what is going on here. And it occurred to me one day while I was sitting here, as I was staring into some of the tanks here that I'm growing some of the little moon jellies in, that the ones in these tanks really don't seem to have that issue. In other words, their bell stretches out as it normally does. And I'm not sure if you can see in there. And anyway, all of a sudden the light came on, and I thought to myself, why are the jellies in these tanks here seeming to grow okay, and yet down here they seem to be pulling their bell in? And as I started thinking about it and looking at it, and all of a sudden it kind of became a little obvious to me. You see that red patch there along the edge? That's not only food, which I guess I have to admit I haven't done as good a job getting the waste out of the tank, and so that's what part of today is about, is doing some maintenance here in the tank. But I want to show you something, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this or not. So I'm not really sure if you can see it, but you can see the orange patch there, and what you're looking at is the bottom of the tank. And you'll notice some white structures standing up inside that orange mass. Well, as it turns out, those white structures are polyps, jellyfish polyps. And so your question is, polyps? What are polyps? Well, these are polyps, and if you're familiar with a reef aquarium, you're probably familiar with what we'll call Aptasia anemones. Well, these polyps and Aptasia have the same basic structure, which is essentially a column or a tall, narrow body that has a oral disc that opens up, rimmed with tentacles, stinging tentacles, and then, of course, a foot that allows it to attach to something. In the case of jellyfish, these polyps, when properly stimulated, the oral disc will begin to segment, and those discs that break off are called ephyra, and those ephyra actually are what develop into the jellyfish. But my point is, those polyps are really quite stingy, far more so than, in this case, moon jellyfish. And let me be real clear about this. In the world of jellyfish, all jellyfish sting, some more than others. The big advantage of moon jellyfish, as far as the hobby is concerned, moon jellyfish, their stinging tentacles can't really penetrate your skin. So if there is any sting effect, it's extremely mild, which in this case is beneficial for the aquarium hobby because we don't necessarily need any of those killers out there. We're trying to create an environment that is attractive as far as the look is concerned, not attractive in the sense as far as how badly it can hurt you. But anyhow, the point I'm trying to make is, as far as the moon jellyfish, the parents, the large oral discs that we're trying to display in a tank, they don't have much of a sting. But their children, their siblings, in this case, the polyps, do have a very strong sting. And as I mentioned, the little baby jellies in these little ephyra tanks that I'm growing don't seem to have the issue as far as their bell curling in, but the ones down here in this holding tank do. And again, it occurred to me, the reason they're pulling their bell in is they're getting stung by all the polyps sitting down at the bottom of the tank. And so it would appear as though what I need to do is simply remove the polyps out of the bottom of the tank, which will stop stinging the parents, and they'll, feel more comfortable and allow the rim or edge of their bell to extend a little further out as normal. But with that many little jellyfish floating around in that tank, it's kind of hard to remove those polyps separately without affecting negatively the jellyfish themselves. And what I mean by that is my solution or the manner of which I will get those polyps out of there is to go in there with a little scraper and basically scrape them right off the bottom. Because I don't want them to remain within the tank, which once you start scraping, just like when you clean your aquarium, they'll just kind of go all over the place. I will have a little siphon line that I'll include right behind and go in there and scrape and siphon at the same time. That's how I would normally remove them. But in this case, putting a little siphon down there inside that tank, chances are I'm going to end up siphoning up some of their older brothers or children or parents, the jellies that I've raised, and I don't want to risk that. So I find myself at an interesting point where the solution apparently is to remove the jellies out of that tank, then go in there and clean the tank, and then possibly putting the jellyfish back. So if we're going to remove the jellyfish temporarily, where are we going to put them? I suppose I could put them all in a 5-gallon bucket. I guess that would be a simple solution. And if I was a regular hobbyist with no other resources, I guess realistically that would be my choice. But I think I'm a little more, I have a few more resources than a regular hobbyist, and one of those resources is this large 48-inch jelly aquarium that's been sitting here idle for months. And so what I think I'm going to do is set up this tank and move all those jellies from there into this system here. And you would think that would be a pretty simple solution. So with that in mind, I hooked up the plumbing on the underside of this tank to the wet-dry trickle filter that's been running on the rest of the breeding system for the last 9 months. And then I went ahead and filled the tank up with new salt water or seawater. And just before I plugged this in, it occurred to me, you know, I'm going to be adding probably 90 gallons of room temperature, air temperature water, new seawater to the breeding system, and that's going to push that temperature from 55 degrees. You know, it's going to have an influence, so it's going to raise it. Well, if it raises that temperature, all these polyps that are up here in these polyp tanks are going to get stimulated, and they're going to start doing their thing, which is what we call strobulating. Strobulation, again, is where the oral disc of the polyp structure segments and begins to bud or break off, also referred to as, I believe, asexual reproduction. And so that temperature change, which is kind of that cue for those polyps to do the strobulation thing, is going to encourage an abundance of polyps to begin to do that. Next thing you know, I'm going to end up with an abundance of ephyra, which is always a good thing, but with that in mind, I need to make these ephyra tanks ready, and you can see they too need to be cleaned. And at the same time, I've got 3 of them here. 2 are set up with the new spray bars in them. One of them's not, so I need to go ahead and fix that. So as it turns out, one thing kind of encourages or leads to another and then to another. So that's what today's episode is all about. We're going to go ahead and make the modifications at the top of these tanks. We're then going to go ahead and move all those jellyfish out of those tanks, probably over into this large holding tank, as well as move the jellies out of this holding tank into this large jelly aquarium. So tag along with us as we go through the motions and try to create a new environment that works for everything.
Tropical Fish Hobbyist Magazine has been the authoritative source for aquarium keepers since the first legendary issue rolled off the presses in 1952. With informative articles month after month about the fascinating world of freshwater aquariums, saltwater setups, paludariums, ponds, and more, illustrated in crisp detail by the world's top aquatic photographers. TFH covers it all. And now, with subscriptions starting at $13.95 and a mobile digital edition you can take with you wherever you go, TFH is your ultimate resource for all things aquatic.
Hi, my name's Jim Stime. I'm the LA Fish Guy. I wanted to let you know about a new site I found called Aquarium.
They have everything you need for your aquarium, from equipment to live fish. It's easy to use and intuitive. Membership is free and you can buy and sell anything to do with fish in a secure environment. Finding what you want is easy. They have some great search capabilities, and the directory has businesses from all over the country. If you sell a fish and need shipping help, they offer great advice. If you would rather have a professional like me help with shipping or even weekly aquarium service, you can find us in the service listings.
And speaking of service reminds me of my customer, Scott.
During a recent service visit, he showed me his Flamingi Tang that's outgrown the tank. He needed to move him out but didn't know how. I told him about Aquarium. He joined up and is finding him a new home. Now he's hunting on Aquarium to find a new tank. There's one now. I bet you Scott's gonna buy it.
Guys, Aquarium is a great resource. Join for free and connect with people all over the country that share your passion. Find great deals from aquarium stores and locate certified service to help you out. Do yourself a favor. Check out Aquarium.
Does your aquarium have an algae problem? Do long green strands of algae grow all over everything? Is red not the color you wanted your rocks and gravel to be? Then you should consider the Santa Monica Algae Scrubber. This unit is designed to be placed above the aquarium or straddling the sump or wet-dry trickle filter below the aquarium. The Santa Monica Algae Scrubber uses 2 light enclosures placed on either side of a specially designed acrylic body to grow algae on a screen suspended from a spray rod inside the unit. That screen quickly and naturally grows its own algae, which in turn is scraped off on a weekly basis. If you want your fish or reef aquarium back, the Santa Monica Algae Scrubber is the solution. Visit santa-monica.cc for more information.
So the first step in getting the whole system going is to get this last Ephyra tank set up with the proper spray bar. I've gone ahead and drilled the holes already and put the elbow in there. And I've got some tubing here. I went ahead and replaced the barbed adapter up here. So what I need to do is just hook up the tubing to the spray bar, and then we can get that tank ready and then start cleaning them.
And the installation of that spray bar starts first by immersing the end of the tubing into a coffee cup containing boiling water. The boiling water softens the tubing so it not only slips over the barbed end of the fitting much easier, but once that tubing cools down, it seems to conform around the barbs on the fitting as well, making it double secure. We're then going to take that whole spray bar assembly with tubing and all and thread it through the hole that I've already drilled into the top of the tank. This is the easiest way for me to install this. It means I have to slip the tubing end from the inside of the tank and pull it outwards. Once I've got the spray bar assembly pulled through the hole in the top of the tank, we can then go ahead and trim the excess tubing off the end of the hose and then once again immerse it into the coffee cup of boiling water. This will allow it to fit under the barb fitting of the manifold above much easier and much more secure.
Okay, we've gone ahead and added the new spray bar. We made a little interesting modification. We realized that since we were cutting off a bit of this green spray bar to accommodate the length or the width inside here, we had excess left over, and with this rigid tubing that we're now using, it would cause the spray bar to kind of tweak a little bit, meaning at an angle. So I used this little green piece right here, which is part of the trash from the chopped up spray bar, to act as a stabilizer so that the entire spray bar is horizontal in there. And we'll go ahead and open up the valve. And looks like there's no issues as far as water leakage, so let's shut it down, and we can now go ahead and clean that tank. And then we need to move the jellies out of this other tank first, though. So now that we've made the modifications necessary to use these as effective Ephyra tanks, in other words, get the flow dynamics inside the tank proper, because those little tiny Ephyra are a little on the delicate side, and if the spray bars are a little too forceful, it may cause some deformalities in the jellies. And since I'm having some fairly good success, I want to also make sure that I'm having even greater success by making sure everything works properly, or in this case, let's say smoothly. So with that in mind, I need to start moving some of these small jellies out of this little tank. I think I'm going to move them into the tank in the top, because I have a sale of about 18 of them to make this coming Monday. So let's go ahead and start cleaning the tanks. since I need to wait just a few minutes for the debris to kind of settle in those tanks above that I just cleaned before I start moving the jellies over, it'll give me a chance to finish the plumbing on the underside of this big 48-inch jelly aquarium. I've got the drain lines hard piped in to one end of the wet-dry trickle filter, and when I originally set up the system, I incorporated this gate valve and barb elbow here, and that's going to just hook right into the underside of the tank. So all I need to do is just add these two snap clamps.
Those two snap clamps, a short length of tubing, and the gate valve are what control the flow of water going into the jelly aquarium.
Now, I should be able to open up this gate valve, which will start sending water into the return pocket of the jelly aquarium, which comes into the tank, and it'll start the rotation. That in turn will then spill over the overflow, come down here, and then pass into the wet-dry trickle filter, become part of this entire breeding system.
The advantage specifically of a gate valve is the degree that you can control the flow of water passing through it. With jellyfish, we want to be real careful in the amount of flow. Essentially, all we're trying to do is sweep the jellies off the bottom of the tank. Think in terms of the jellies as being a kite, and we're trying to create the wind that's going to lift them up into the tank.
Okay, so I think I've got the flow dialed in. Now keep in mind there's a large Iwaki pump back here discharging out to a refrigeration unit. It's an intentionally oversized pump, which is why I've got a bypass valve here sending some of that flow right back into the sump. Again, that gate valve, which is what went up to the new jelly aquarium, and then at the same time there's a series of valves over here for controlling the flow into all those various tanks. So we want to make sure everything is set back and not over running at the moment. And I think the two tanks that we scrubbed a moment ago, enough of the debris has settled that we can go ahead and siphon that debris off the bottom of the tank and then start those tanks up. What I'm going to end up doing is moving the jellies, the babies, out of this tank and this one here up into this tank. And then ultimately, I need to move all of these out into this large 48-inch jelly aquarium so that I can clean the bottom of that tank. And of course, this addition of 90 to 100 gallons of new air temperature water is going to, in fact it already is, raising the water temperature inside the system, which means that the polyps that are in these tanks up here will most likely strobilate. And that's why we're getting these outer two tanks ready so that all three of them can accept ephyra from a new strobilation event. So make it a point to come on back for part 2 as we finish cleaning the systems and then start moving the jellies over into their new tanks, ultimately trying to keep as clean, disease-free environment as we can, which is really one of the two keys to keeping jellyfish. The other being temperature. See you in a bit. We're here in Des Moines, Iowa. We're here to attend the 23rd Annual Marine Aquarium Conference. We're going to have exhibitors, we're going to have attendees, we're going to have speakers that we want to show you a MACNA experience. MACNA experience. The MACNA experience. So come along with us. So come along with us. So come along with us.
As episode 106 showcases some of the MACNA speakers.
The LA Fish Guy.
Sanjay.
The more expensive skimmer has to be better.
Boy, it's so great to come back to these conferences.
There's also a huge number of exhibitors.
This year we have over 200 booths.
Hi, welcome to MACNA.
We're here with Russ of CPR Aquatics. So there's a plethora of different products here for hobbyists to select from. We're here with Rod of Rod's Food.
1,000 to 1,500 people come there.
We're here with some of the attendees from the MACNA conference. We've got one here from the West Coast and a couple from the East Coast.
3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
It's basically the annual reunion of fish geeks across the U.S. and the world.
Yes. They've traveled here from Trinidad. This is another product you're probably familiar with. One of the really big exhibitors here at the MACNA is Dr. Foster and Smith.
And did I mention the number of booths selling coral frags?
First class event all the way around.
So be sure to keep an eye out for episode 106, The MACNA Experience.